Hello, everyone, and thanks for coming. I have the pleasure of welcoming you to such an amazing event here in MIT. And to introduce the event, I thought I'd tell you a bit about our course 2007, which many of you know as MIT students and members of the community, but perhaps some of you don't. 2007 is our sophomore kind of legendary robotics competition led by Professor Amos Winter. And we had the finals of 2007 on Tuesday night. And like the theme of today, the theme of 007 this year is Formula One. And the official name of the 007 competition was F007 Designed to Survive. So here's a picture of the finals, one of the competition tables from the arena on Tuesday night. And you can see the racetrack, and there's a lot of mechanical elements involved in the contest. And you had really amazing robots the students built, racing around the track, turning the wheels, lifting the trophy, et cetera, et cetera. And each table was accompanied by a model Formula One car. You can see the robot removing the tire here. This is a McLaren car. So we weren't able to get a sponsorship from McLaren, so we had to go with McLaren for now. And we even had a champagne celebration at the end. So welcome to Zak Brown, CEO of McLaren Racing. Not only CEO of McLaren Racing, but an accomplished driver, entrepreneur, leader, and Professor Amos Winter. I couldn't imagine a better way to celebrate Mechie than through Formula One, which is the pinnacle of engineering and teamwork and such awesomeness. So please come to the stage and take it away.
Let's have another round of applause for Zak Brown, CEO, McLaren Racing, Constructors Champion 2024, 2025. This is so cool. And thank you, John, for the introduction. Also, big thanks to Lisa Maxwell, who's in the back there, who organized all of this. So before we start, we wanted to thank you for coming here. And we figured you'd probably get a bunch of swag at these things that you don't really want. So we thought of making you something that maybe is more your style. So you're quite well known for getting tattoos of very important race wins. Ricardo's at Monza and Lando's first win at Miami. So what we did in your style is made you an MIT temporary tattoo for Mechie and papaya orange.
Thank you.
Which I am rocking too.
I like it. I like it.
So there you go. Great. So let's kick it off, Zak. So you joined McLaren in 2016.
Yes.
You became CEO in 2018. The 2015 and 2017 seasons were really rough. You were second to last in the Constructors Championship. And so you have architected this resurrection of the team. And so we love a great innovation story here. Can you tell us how you came in and did that resurrection? And I think what's particularly interesting about this is you are not from a technical background, you're from a racing background, but you very openly admit in your book that 80% of the jobs at McLaren you could not do. So how did you do that, this conductor of an orchestra, to go through that resurrection into that success?
Yep, absolutely. And good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here. Lots of intelligent people in this room, and just met a great group of racers. For me, it was quite simple. It was people, right? We live in a technology world, but it's people that need to work together, need to develop technology, grow as a racing team. So we were a very dysfunctional organization. There was a lot of lack of trust. There was a lot of politics in our racing team. We had very little sponsorship revenue. That was something I was very comfortable with from a background point of view. And so I went about changing my leadership team one by one. I didn't come into the racing team with, I'm going to change everything. I came into the racing team going, I need to understand what's going on here. Why are we ninth in the championship? This great iconic racing team, a second most successful racing team in the world. And I quickly figured out it was at a people problem. I had a culture problem. Not amongst all 1,000 people at McLaren, but amongst the leadership team, because everyone then keys off of the leadership. So I made changes one by one. It quickly became clear to me that I didn't have the right people around me, and then rebuilt the commercial side of the business, became a much more inclusive racing team. We went back to our famous papaya colors. Everyone said, you're only doing that because that's what the fans want. And it was like, that's exactly why we're doing it. That's what our fans want. So, you know, there was an arrogance. We had some issues with Honda, and we blamed them for everything. And then when we put the Renault engine in, and we moved to 6th in the championship, it was like, all right, so Honda's responsible from 9th to 6th, but we're responsible from 6th to 1st. So went about just rebuilding the culture of the organization, bringing in some sponsorship. Now we have the best brands in the world affiliated with our race car, many of them technology brands. And what I knew we had was a great brand that wasn't in a great place. And I knew out of 1,000 people, 900 of them were great. They just weren't getting great leadership. And so went about changing that, built a lot of momentum, got some great racing drivers, had a few false starts along the way. And then here we are, back-to-back Constructors champions, and I would not rule us out for this year's championship.
Yeah, you had a good showing in Miami.
We had a good showing in Miami. I think we could have won that, and I think also in Japan. In Japan, the safety car didn't fall our way, and in Miami, you know, it's easy when you go back and look and say, oh, we should have pitted a lap earlier, not got undercut. But when you're leading, that sometimes actually isn't the best position to be in, because second place can key off of you. So we were very quick in Miami. Not a bad weekend.
Can you tell us a bit more deeply about how, you know, you transitioned from just marketing international, your company you sold, and then came into McLaren, and you all of a sudden had to vet people who have like deep technical expertise. You give a lot of credit to Andrea Stella in your book, which is amazing. How do you navigate across disciplines and outside of your own discipline to vet competence and to build that leadership team for success?
I think I've got a good read on people.
Yeah.
So while I won't necessarily understand when I'm sitting down with the aerodynamic team exactly what they're saying or the charts, and I think sometimes they show me the charts upside down just to intentionally figure out if I know what I'm looking at. But what I can tell is, wait a minute, you said this in the last meeting, and it's not happened for this meeting.
Yeah.
Or that kind of sounds like a bit of an excuse, or that sounds like you're not being accountable or responsible. Like, so you can get a feel for people regardless of what skill set they have or the department they're in. So I think that's a skill you need to have as a business leader. And then ultimately make sure, you know, my view is I work for the race team, they don't work for me. So I'm here to support the engineers, the aerodynamicists, the designers, HR, finance, whatever the various departments are, and give them what they need, which is direction, resources, people, confidence, and getting the right people around the table. But I wouldn't know a great aerodynamicist from a bad one, but I would know a good leader from a bad one.
Wow. Well, it's a great credit to you that you have played that conductor role and gotten back to the front of the grid. As CEO, you have this 35,000-foot view of the entire organization and the interconnectedness of the different parts of the team. Where do you see the greatest opportunities for competitive advantage? And they could be in business and sponsorship and technology and AI. And can we help? You know,
I'm sure
we can do a lot of stuff here.
I'm sure you can help. When I sit around, I have a variety of meetings. You know, we're 1,400 people in total at McLaren. About 1,000 of those are on the Formula One team. And so you can't get to know them all. So I meet with them in subsections of groups, senior leadership team, rising talent, people that have just joined, people that have joined from other teams, because I want to know from other teams, what are other teams doing? And I don't mean that necessarily from a pure technical point of view, but ways of working. When I go around the table, we have a lot of people, a lot more than I would have thought, that have joined us straight out of university and make a big difference. When I ask our technical team, how quickly will someone make a difference coming out of college, university, it's 2 to 3 weeks. Wow. And I know when I started working, it took me 2 to 3 weeks just to figure out where my desk was. So it's amazing how quickly young talent can contribute. And I think it's because younger talent have grown up around technology. Us old guys are having to play technology catch up at times. And so, I go around and I meet with the different teams to try and get a feel for, if you've been here a long time, you'll have one view of McLaren. If you've just started, you'll have another view of McLaren. If you came from a team, you came from a university, and trying to get all those people assembled. As far as the advantage, it's definitely culture and ways of working. And I try and get people, and it is my primary role, to think globally. And I don't mean that from a geographic point of view, but everyone is so busy. So I'll give you an example. Lando and I would do an event at the Apollo Theater, and that's kind of a communications platform. But then you go, hey, we have a lot of employees and families that would love to come to events. Let's save 100 seats for some employee motivation and some family recognition. Now let's bring some sponsors into it. Let's bring in our licensing team because maybe we can sell some merchandise. And so what starts off as a communications event starts to impact a lot more of the business. So I think that's one of the things I try and do, which is a competitive advantage, is how can you kind of sweat the assets, if you'd like, leverage them as much as possible. From a pure technical point of view, obviously the whole world is about AI now. The truth is somewhere in the middle. You'll meet some people and they'll just walk around the factory and they'll go, AI, AI, AI. And it's like, steady.
We have the same problem here.
Well, there's a lot of regulations. A lot of what we need to do, if not most, needs to be 100% accurate, not 99% accurate. To get some stuff out of AI, you need to feed the system. There's a lot of confidentiality, a lot of IP. So it's just not as simple as AI can solve everything. At the same time, I've done some social experiments, and I have an AI wall of shame, which is areas in which you have people that don't embrace new technologies fast enough, and they're leaving a lot of productivity on the table. So I had one the other day. I had a sensitive document, and I went to someone that I didn't think would think of AI, and I went, hey, I need this document taken out of PDF and put into a Word document, and they did it. I didn't tell them how to do it, and I said, hey, thanks for getting that done. How'd you do that? Well, I took it out of this file. I said, how long did it take you? About an hour. I took that same document. I went to my assistant, said, can you stick it in AI and do it 3 minutes, 42 seconds. And so you sit there and you go, how many people in the organization are doing something in an hour where it can take you 3 minutes and 42 seconds? And so, when I ask for a sponsorship proposal and they go, I'll get it to you next week because we're packed, which I get, could next week become tomorrow if we were leaning into AI more? So trying to drive culture of getting everyone to think about AI, and I think there's a lot more we can be doing with it, but it's not the solution for everything.
Does that help you fit under the cost cap as well, more easily?
So cost cap's a big issue. We also have regulations on how much wind tunnel time we can use and CFD time we can use. Now, I think a competitive advantage is until the governing body and all of us get our arms around exactly how you monitor AI, if you can use it in a way that gives you some incremental support to the wind tunnel without increasing runs, you can get a competitive advantage. So I do think the quicker you can lean into new technologies, Formula One's all about, here are the rules, and then you try and figure out what the rules, if they don't say you can't do it, then you try and do it.
You ain't racing if you ain't cheating, right?
Well, and so you take flexi wings as an example, right? So we're not allowed to have movable aerodynamic devices, but your wings can flex, and is that movable or not? And so they ended up flexing too much, and then the FIA went, we're going to do a push-down test, so it can only flex so much. Then we went, then we're going to come up with some technology where that'll lean back instead of push down under loads. So then they went, now we see what we're doing. So it's kind of the inmates are always trying to kind of be a little bit smarter than the police because there's more of us, right? It's one FIA against 11 brilliant teams with hundreds of engineers, so it's an unfair fight. And so our job is to try and always, well, it doesn't say you can't do it, therefore you can do it, and then the FIA will catch on to it, and they'll go, can't do that stuff. And then you're constantly trying to stay ahead on the technology side.
Is there any kind of teaming up between the teams to get that competitive advantage?
No.
Even from a engine supplier like Mercedes?
Well, on the engine front, they pretty much control their world. You know, they set up, we bolt it in the back of our car, Mercedes engineers show up, so we can't kind of get into the technology. All their IP is very protected. So obviously we have a vested interest in making sure that Mercedes has the best power unit, but we don't have any influence or control over that. So what you will get, which I'm trying to stop, you have a lot of this for those of you that follow Formula One, A and B team stuff that's going on where you have B teams that are subservient to the A teams, and so they'll vote really what's not in the best interest of the B team to help the A team because they need the stuff from the A team. But now the sport is very successful. It's always been very successful. Those teams are very fiscally strong. So I'm trying to break that now. So I'm not that popular with some people.
I want to go back to something you said a minute ago about how you've really helped grow the marketing presence. You talked about you and Lando going to a premiere at the Apollo Theater. How does that marketing effort translate to faster lap times? Because it's part of it. Right?
So ultimately, and I think this is something that's driven the culture of the racing team. When I joined, it was an us in them, and it was, you know, the commercial team over here, finance over there, HR over there, upstairs, downstairs, the suits, people on the, you know, it's kind of lack of teamwork. I think what we've been able to successfully do is there's no Formula One without awesome fans. Who engages with our fans? Our communications team, our marketing team. So if you don't get that right, then what comes next is you've got to monetize that sponsorship. That's what pays for our racing. So you got to have a great commercial team. Then you have to have a great finance team because we live in the cost cap world. So we used to be able to just spend. Now we have to spend very wisely and not waste a dollar. So everything we spend has to put performance into the team. And I don't say the race car because sometimes the team is the mental wealth and well-being of our team. We just put it in a new human performance center, or whether you're upgrading canteens, so you've got a better work environment and people are healthier. Then that gets passed on to the actual racing team, the designers, and go racing. So when we win on Sunday, everybody feels and understands that their contribution all put performance on the race car, whether they were designing the race car or in the communications or finance department or the HR department. Everything has to, you know, fire on all cylinders to be a competitive racing team.
Yeah, it's resources and team buy-in. Yeah,
and everyone has to understand how important their role is, because then everyone will go the extra mile. And then you got to create a great work environment, because we're working kind of 24/7 all around the world. And so I do believe fun has to be a big part of going racing. Fun builds trust. Who wants to work alongside miserable people? And you know, we live on the road together. So, but fun is not to be mistaken for not being deadly serious come race time.
I have a fun question. You sit on the pit wall of every race.
Yeah.
Why? What do you do?
I'm either usually texting with my friends, giving them updates during the
Bragging.
race. No. Or the family. They're very dialed into the races. Reality is on pit wall, other than observing how we're working, there's really only three things that will come up to me for potentially come up to me for a decision. One, a driver swap. Drivers don't love swapping around, and so if that's kind of a controversial decision, they might check in with me. Mercedes or the power unit providers have the ability to tell you to park the car if they see something wrong with the engine.
wow.
I can override that, but then there's financial consequences. You know, if they say pull in, it looks like something's going to break, I do have the ability to say, no, we keep going. But then if it breaks, it's on us. I've only had to make that decision once. That was with the Renault engine in France. we lost almost all our water, but we were running in the top 10. So my general view is if we're in the points, go for it. If we're not in the points, park it. So we pulled that off, and we literally had no water left in the engine at the end. And then the other is driver safety. If we see something, we had in China, Lando's brakes were failing. We're about a lap away from pulling him in. In Montreal, he had a brake fire, which did stop him. So if there's something safety related, and then there, my general rule is we can always find other drivers, so keep going.
Is that chain of communication from you to Andrea to the race engineers? Or
yeah, so on the channels, it's amazing how much kind of air traffic control is going on. I'll have about 20 channels that I'm listening to, but you've got different volume levels. So, the drivers are up with the engineers. I want to hear that. And then there's a light that blinks when someone talks. So even though you've got 20, I'll have some that are turned down, some that are turned up. But then if you have an issue, I might turn up the reliability channel because I know we're having a discussion around reliability or weather or something of that matter. But my communication, other than telling the team they've done a good job after a pit stop or something of that nature, I only talk to Andrea. You have to have very strict communication when you've got 20 channels going on, and as many, you can't have chatter. So there's very disciplined, so the only people that talk to the driver are the engineers. So I have a private channel with Andrea. I can hear everything else, but then I can have a private conversation with Andrea if I have an observation or a question that I want to talk to him about.
I have another fun question. I think everybody would love to hear about what did it feel like at Abu Dhabi in 2024? And I'm asking this personally too, because I was there.
You were there, I was there.
And I got a pit, yeah, I know you were there. And your team was kind enough to give me a pit pass that day, and I went in, and the nervous energy was palpable in the garage.
It shows you how quickly the sport can change, right? On Saturday, we qualified first and second. Leclerc qualified 17th, 18th. Yeah. He had an issue, and it was kind of, a lot of people were going, it's game over. Leclerc had an unbelievable start. I think he got up to P8 by lap 2. And all of a sudden, Lando had to win. Had we not, which is where the 7/10 comes from, we were kind of down to one pit stop. If Lando doesn't win, we don't win the World Championship. That was unbelievably stressful. Because everything happens in slow motion. So it was interesting. I watched the replay afterwards. I was like, that was a boring race. We dominated. That's not what it felt like on pit wall, because you also start to, like happened in 21, start worrying about all the other drivers. So it was kind of like Lando's under control, but like you start worrying about things that are outside of your control. So that was quite stressful. Singapore this year was different because I think we were so dominant last year, it became at a certain point when, not if, from a constructor's standpoint. So that constructor's championship didn't have the same level of energy, but the drivers did, because came down to Lando had to win or be in front of Max and one other position. So you had the same stress all over again, but over a different scenario driver championship.
Yeah, and a nail biter with Yuki.
Yeah, that was not on. That was inappropriate.
So your contract goes through 2030. In your book, it's very clear you've always been a go-getter, always ambitious, always going to the next thing. You have 2 world titles. What do you aspire to now?
I want to win the Triple Crown, which is
really?
the Indianapolis 500,
sure.
which is next weekend, and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Now, we've done it before as a team. We're the only team to have ever done it, but a team boss hasn't done it because they were done in 3 different decades. So we're now kind of calling this the papaya era, and so to get it all done in the same decade with kind of the same team would be historic. We won Monaco, so we've done one of the 3. We've finished second at Indy twice in the last 3 years. Crashed while going for the lead. So Pato, we've got 4 cars we're running. Pato's very strong around there. Ryan Hunter-Ray is racing with us, and Christian Lundgaard, who won last weekend, and Nolan Siegel. And then we've just been starting development of our World Endurance Hypercar, which will debut at Le Mans next year. We won Le Mans or debut in 95. So I want to keep winning in Formula One. Two's not enough. One driver championship. I'd love to have 2 world championship drivers at the same time. Growing up, you know, it was Senna and Prost, and you had Lewis and Alonso and Lauda and Prost. So I'd love to see Oscar win a championship in papaya colors and have 2 world champions racing for us for a long time. We've got the best driver lineup in Formula One.
Yeah. Do you see yourself doing this for a long, long time?
To at least 2040.
That's awesome.
That's my plan.
My last question before we open it up is, I get a lot of students asking me about how to pursue a career in motorsports. And so I think a lot of them would love your advice. How do they get into it? How do they get into F1, being in the US and getting over to Europe? You know, visa issues, salary is quite different compared to US jobs. Can you give them some advice?
Yeah, I think visas is almost the #1 issue because the UK want to protect the youth and the upcoming there. So you have to be at a certain salary range or a skill set that they feel doesn't exist in the UK. So that's kind of challenge #1 is just getting to get the right work visa there. I say just get experience. You know, even if your goal is Formula One, just get experience in motorsports. Don't be too picky. I mean, if you want to be in engineering, don't start in the marketing department. But you know, if you want to be an aerodynamicist, maybe get into a department that's around that space. So just get experience, build relationships is the first thing that you need to do. And maybe starting with getting some experience here, because then you have some motorsports experience, which I think gives you a better chance of showing that you've got some unique skill set. And so getting a work visa might be a little bit easier. Never give up. Apply everywhere. You know, get used to rejection. It's like you know, sponsorship. You know, for one yes, you get a 99 no's, and that's just the way it is. It's very competitive. A lot of intelligent people. Spell my name right on anything that you send me, because if it's not, I don't get to the next sentence. And not because I've been called a lot of things. I've been called a lot worse than just misspelling my name. But it's a lack of attention to detail.
Sure.
So I think, you know, make sure your presentation on how you present yourself is of the highest quality, because there is so much competition. You got to figure out how to break through. But you know, kind of go the extra mile and just get experience. That's what's most important.
Great, thank you. So we're going to open it up to the audience now, and we have people walking around with mics. I saw the first hand up with the Red Sox hat there. Let's start there, Scott.
Hey, Zach. My name is Karthik. My question to you is...
Can you stand up?
Oh, sorry. My question to you is it time for McLaren to start building their own engines?
Good question. So I've just seen yesterday what the new engine regulations might look like for 2030, 2031. It makes no financial sense unless you're a huge OEM. If we can simplify the rules and bring in a cost cap like we've done on the racing team, doing our own engines is something that we are now starting to talk about. That would be the ideal scenario, but you see Red Bull's done an unbelievable job with their engine, but then you also see what's going on with Aston Martin when you get it wrong. So it's also a very high risk, so you better have a high reward, because if you're in Aston's situation, you know, they're going to be in trouble for a while, which then leads to sponsorship problems, which leads to drivers not wanting to drive for you. And so, you know, those are some challenges, but it is something that we would like to do.
That's great. I saw your hand first in the McLaren jersey.
Hi, Zach. My name is Diana. I'm a freshly minted MIT PhD in political science department. So I'm also one of the non-technical people in a very technical setting. So my question to you is, as you alluded to earlier in your talk, how do you, as such a important role in such a highly technical space, adjudicate differences or disagreement when it comes to engineering decisions, when it comes to big, sort of important technical decisions that are made on a team that needs your decision, that need your support?
Good question. they need my support, but I won't make that decision. I will delegate that to Andrea Stella. At the end of the day, everything rolls up to Andrea from a performance. He is responsible for the performance of the racing team. Fortunately, we don't have many disagreements. We have debates, but I wouldn't say disagreements. Pete Bodromo's our head of aero, has done an unbelievable job. Rob Marshall's our chief designer. And so between those two and Andrea, they're ultimately responsible for the direction and design of the race car. I don't need to interfere with the three of them. They've been doing it a long time. They're the subject matter expertise. Ultimately, Andrea would make that final decision. You're welcome.
Let's grab one over here. How about you, Danny, up front, black sweater?
Hi, Zach. How are you? Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Arjun. I suppose, you talk about having support from your technical team as someone who doesn't necessarily have that background. But obviously, that first step of finding the people that you trust to make the right decisions is obviously a decision that you have to reckon with. So what is your thought process when hiring your own leadership team and, for anyone wanting to go into leadership within motorsport who doesn't necessarily have the technical background?
You can tell a lot about people about their ambition, how prepared they are. Are they inquisitive? Are they asking questions? Are they telling you what they would like to do? So take GP, who we just hired from Red Bull. I'm not really in a great position to check his skill set. Results speak for themselves. He's looked after Max Verstappen, who's not an easy driver to manage, and so that tells me GP's got a strong personality, and he kind of won't back down. Red Bull's been an amazing racing team. They have a bit of an underdog mentality, and when I spoke with him, he was pretty clear on what he wants to do with his career, so I could tell this guy's a leader. His results speak for themselves. So fortunately, the only time I really get involved on the technical side is people that have been very experienced, so I don't need to kind of quiz them on what they know. Their results kind of speak for themselves. Will Courtney, who is a strategy for us, worked alongside him, so I can then go to some of his peers. What was GP to work with? And then I always get multiple people involved when I'm interviewing. I make sure my whole leadership team interviews everyone as well, because I want to make sure they're asking questions maybe I haven't asked. I want all their perspectives. So data is something that's critical in our world, and whether that data is coming off of a computer or off a sensor, or that's just data from asking the 10 people on my leadership team, give me input, that's data. So I'm data driven in my decision making, but again, that data could be coming from humans as opposed to computers.
How about you right there? Oh, you, double hands. Yeah, no, your friend was pointing at you too.
Both of us? Hi, Zach. My name is Maria. Thank you so much for coming. So you've shown a really great season this year, but doesn't look like you're number one right now. What is your plan to really get your team up there?
It's fair. I don't like it, but it's fair. So we just got to keep doing what we're doing. A lot of people said to me when we were, what are you going to do differently now that you're fighting? It's like, no, let's keep doing what we're doing. I think what's important in sport is you're not at the top always in any sport. And I think the more you react to that and do things differently because you're kind of panicked, that's a bad place to be. So all we did, Mercedes did an unbelievable job in Australia. And you with all these new rules, you look at how much of a gap we've closed in a very short period of time. We had some great developments on the car in Miami. We've got great developments coming on the car in Montreal. We'll continue to push. So it's kind of don't panic, because that's when you start overreacting and you don't think very clearly. I always tell everyone in the factory, passion is a great thing to have in sport. Emotion's a terrible thing to have. And there's a very fine line between that, just as there's a very fine line between bravery and stupidity. And so you need to just stay the course. It's something that Andrea's very good at, keeping very calm, analyzing everything, and to just keep working hard, keep working smart. And we almost won Miami, and if you look at where we were in Australia, we were 40 seconds behind at the end of the race. So we've closed the gap a lot. it is human nature at the first race of the year in Australia when they see the gap and go, well, this season's over. The season's not over. There's a long, long way to go. It's kind of 2 seasons now with how many races it is. So we're now 5, 6 races into it, and we're closing the gap quickly. I think we're now ahead of Ferrari, not by much, and that could change at any time, but I feel like we're the 2nd quickest team and have closed the gap significantly, and I like our chances. Are we the favorite sitting here right now for this year? No, you'd have to say Mercedes is, but I also think they could have some challenging times ahead with their 2 drivers.
Let's get in the back in the blue shirt.
Hi, Zach. I'm Khushi. I'm from the Harvard Business School. Thank you so much for being here. I know we spoke a lot about leadership today, but curious how you think of your role as a leader when it comes to the drivers specifically, driver conflicts, motivation, etc. Curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, working with the drivers is one of my favorite parts. Having once raced, I think that's an area that I understand very well, especially the mental side of it. I think it's high adrenaline, they're highly strung, they're kind of caged animals. And so you need to know when to approach them, how to approach them, when to approach them. We're very fortunate that we have the 2 drivers that we have. Make no mistake about it, it takes a lot of management, a lot of communication. We've got our papaya rules, which everyone likes to have some fun with. And drivers can be very difficult to manage. Everyone was saying last year, you should favor one driver. What are you doing? And it was like, we stayed the course. We stayed true to our racing values. And our goal was to go down to the final race of the year and have 2 drivers that compete for the World Championship and not want to punch each other in the nose at the end of the year. And we pulled it off. And everyone said we wouldn't. But those are the values of McLaren. We sit down with the drivers going into the weekend. We're sitting down with them all the time, but to talk about strategy. And then Andrea and I sit down with them on Sunday morning to talk about how we think the race could play out. So you don't want to surprise drivers. You don't want to spring stuff on them in the middle of the race that you haven't discussed. Sometimes it happens because you don't know exactly how the race is going to play out. But good communication, good trust. And we really haven't had any issues. They've never been grumpy with each other. They've been grumpy with Andrea and I from time to time, but we'd rather be grumpy with us than each other. I've never felt any tension in the room between the 2 of them, because you can feel that when you have 2 dogs on the playground and they got their tails up. You can go, oh, I think a fight's about ready to break out. And you don't feel that with our guys. They want to beat each other, make no mistake about it. So I think we're fortunate, and a lot of, with our culture, a lot of the people we select, starting with the drivers, are kind of who are they as human beings, and they help set the culture for the racing team. I try and joke around with the drivers. Andrea is very serious. I know how stressful the start of a race can be. So kind of my role is I'm usually goofing around with them on the grid to just try and get them to laugh and relax and not overthink the start to races and let Andrea handle the more technical part of the conversation.
Let's get everyone from over here. On the aisle, right there, the young guy in the blue sweatshirt. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Don Baskin. Nick Ahrens says hello.
Say hi to Nick.
Will do.
Nick, I went to high school with and is responsible for helping me get into racing. He had the coolest 1959 Austin Healey Bug-Eye Sprite painted like
Green and green.
Group 44 car. Small piece of history there.
Nice.
Yeah. No, I'm really, I guess, impressed that you were able to kind of go from motorsports to Just Marketing Inc. And I'm just wondering, can you give us some words about how do you find that sort of self-confidence and that I can do this to make that jump where you're going in totally different industries? How does anybody put that confidence together?
I kind of didn't know any better, and I didn't have any other choices. It was passion led. It was to fund my own racing career, so I had to learn how to do sponsorship. I didn't know anything about it. It's very difficult. It's not as easy as just calling company ABC and saying, will you give me some money. That's how you kind of think it gets started, but it's a much more sophisticated process to understanding companies and how they can use motorsports to benefit. Then you got to learn how to actually run a company. So regardless of what you're in, just a P&L and a balance sheet and contracts and HR, all of which I just kind of learned along the way. I was fortunate. I had a private equity investor about 13, 14 years into my company, Aspire Capital, and I learned a lot from them on actually how to run a company. I didn't know what EBITDA stood for, or how to read a balance sheet. I always ran my business. Do I have more cash in the bank today than I owe? Do I have more contracts today than I did yesterday? And if so, it was like, cool, we're in business. Those were my traffic lights, if you'd like. Then you get into things like HR, because I ended up having a couple hundred people, so you need to understand all those dynamics. But it was always passion-led, never quit. And also, being your own boss, I had no one else to blame. So it was like, I can sit here and live in fantasy land. I'm all for dreaming, but I don't like dreamers. And dreamers kind of dream big, and dreamers just think it's going to show up, and they lack the hard work and tenacity to actually go make your dream happen. So I wanted it so bad. I just woke up every day. They had someone come in when they invested in my company, and they did a little analysis on me, and they said there's two types of successful people in the world. Those people that are motivated by the thrill of victory, and those people that are motivated by the fear of defeat. I'm motivated by the fear of defeat, which I think is the unhealthier, more stressful version. So I wake up every day. I can look at our sponsorship portfolio, and we raise about 450 million pounds a year. But everything's on 3 to maybe 8 year contracts. I'm worried about in 8 years right now that I've got no money in the bank account. It's a bit ridiculous, but that means I want to push that 8 years out as much as possible. So the fear of losing gets me to wake up every day, because in our sport, and really in the world, if you're sitting still, you're going backwards. And then being very critical of just trying to do a little bit better today than I did yesterday. And if you can then ingrain that in everyone, and so when you're your kind of own company, started it in a rental house with now my wife. She wasn't involved in the company, but we just kind of rented a house, and I was just dialing in for dollars. You got kind of no choice, either to quit or just keep going. And then if you keep going and you learn by your mistakes, I'm good with mistakes, just don't make the same one twice. And we're all into technology here. How do you learn what works? By figuring out what doesn't work. That didn't work, that didn't work, that worked. So making sure that you embrace failures, but you own them and you learn from them.
That internal motivation is going to resonate really well with this audience. MIT's known for not really having any competition between students, because they're their own biggest competitor. They're so self-motivated. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, you've had your hand up a bunch. Call you, yeah. Danny, can you come up down front?
Hello, I'm Christian from Chile. I'm just finished my MBA, 2 years MBA, and I would like to ask, how is a typical, not typical, but it's a Monday morning when you had a bad race, such as the one you had in Las Vegas last year? So how you manage that, and how you re-energize your team after the big hit you gave them?
Yeah. So that was a Saturday night race, so that was a bad Sunday. And it was a bad Saturday night. It's staying true to being disciplined on, you debrief. Of course, the emotion at the moment, you want to go nuts. You got to learn how to control it. So, we've all had emails that you want to send when you're in an emotional state. And how many times have we put it in the draft box and looked at it the next day and went, I'm going to modify that? How many times haven't we done that? And we should have. And you went, I'm sorry. So I think what's important is it's a very emotional sport. You can't unwind what happened. It's done. You can learn from it. So I'm a big fan of don't tackle things when you're in an emotional state. Sleep on it, get the data. It's never quite as black and white as it was one person's fault. Don't attack people, attack the problem. So, how did that happen? And it was a series of failures. It wasn't one person getting a measurement wrong. We were actually too high, not too low. So actually we were too conservative, not too aggressive, which isn't normally what happens when you have a skid plate failure. You're being too aggressive. And so it's, kind of don't act any differently when you win. Something that my team's been critical of over the years, I've tried to get better, is I don't celebrate winning that much, because I'm kind of, well, there's the next race that's behind us. So just having the same discipline to review. When we finished first and second in Spain, qualified first and second in Spain last year, we led off the meeting with the 8 things that could have ruined that weekend. We didn't lead off with, hey, we finished first and second. We closed with that. So we tend to start meetings with talking about our failures, because you do want to end on a, you just finished first and second. You don't want people leaving the meeting being like, man, this guy's never happy. So you kind of just stay true to how you debrief. Whether you win or you lose, there's a way you debrief that we do every Monday. We start with the leadership team, then we do something with the wider team. Everyone comes around the racing bays, but just staying consistent and staying predictable.
Great. How about in the back there with glasses? Yep, next to Scott.
Hey, Zach. Thanks. I'm Henry. I'm a PhD candidate at the MIT Sports Lab. Think like data-driven decision-making has permeated sports, both in motorsports and outside. Curious, how much does McLaren look at other sports in terms of data-driven decision-making?
So it's something that we're starting to do more of. Golf we find interesting. Weather is something that you don't necessarily learn from other sports, but that's an area that has a huge impact on our sport. So we're working with Gemini, Google, to help us with weather prediction. So we look at more cultures of other sports as opposed to the data side of other sports. A lot of them approach us because we're so data rich. We pull down 1.5 terabytes of data a weekend. We run about 50 million simulations. We have 300 sensors on the race car. So we do get calls a lot from other sports. So we tend to learn more about culture from other sports, and then other sports are trying to learn technology from us. But I think there's always something to learn. We also learn a lot from our sponsor partners on how they operate, how they tackle things like AI. So our sponsors are very integrated into our racing team. It used to be a sticker on the car and show up and do some hospitality, but Workday is a big partner. They're our finance and HR systems. Gemini's our partner. Cisco's all of our servers and back end, along with Dell. And so they use us as a technology lab, and then we give them challenges on things that we would like to see. And it's a great working relationship because their engineers love challenges, and they recognize Formula One's on the front end of most technologies.
Let's go over here. How about the front row in glasses? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kathia, and I wanted to ask, I knew McLaren race engineers partnered with the Great Barrier Reef Foundation to create the Machine 1 project to speed up coral reef growth. And I was wondering, how did that project really evolve? Was it the engineer's idea? Was it your idea? Did they come to you? And what was your personal involvement? And my bigger question is, how do collaborative projects really start, and how do they play out?
So first of all, you need to know at McLaren, all great ideas start with me. And none of the bad ones. So that actual machine we also call Oscar. And that came about, sustainability is important to us for a variety of reasons. One, we think, as a racing team, we're in the sport and entertainment business, and we've got a great microphone. So on social causes or sustainability, we feel, while we're in the business of entertainment at the end of the day. We can deploy our technologies. We've done materials around prosthetics because we know shock absorption and lightweight materials. We've had technology on the Mars lander. And so that came around through a sustainability initiative. Kim Wilson runs our sustainability, does a wonderful job. And we want to get in areas that we feel we can deploy our technology and make a meaningful difference. And so we've been able to accelerate rebuilding the reef, which has been a fantastic story. It's great, Oscar's from Australia, so he gets involved in it. We have cost cap related issues, so we need to make sure that we're not deploying people from our Formula One team. So we have a business that's called Accelerator, which is a group of individuals that have come from our different racing teams that sit outside of the racing team and work with companies. Sanofi, the big pharmaceutical company, we're helping them develop the factories of the future around data and vibrations, because they have all sorts of issues. If something goes down on a production line, they have downtime of an hour. We've been able to reduce that to 20 minutes, things of that nature. We've worked with airports to help turn planes around quicker because they make their money when they're there, not at the gate. And so that's a bit of kind of pit stop ways of working. Not that we're changing tires on a plane in 2 seconds, but operational efficiency. So we have a business that does that, and that's a project we're quite proud about.
I want to ask a follow-up on that. Around this tension maybe between entertainment and sustainability. Because F1 doesn't have to be fully green by 2030, it's choosing to be. You don't have to run hybrid drivetrains. People loved the V10 sounds. How do you feel about that? What would be the most entertaining?
Well, now we have fully sustainable fuels that cost a fortune. But in everything in technology, it costs a fortune and it's kind of too big and too slow. And then the great thing with technology is it becomes less expensive, quicker, faster, right? Whether it's the phones or batteries in Formula E. You used to have to change cars. Now they got a lot of power. We're a high performance racing team. So at the end of the day, our first goal is to win. So we have to be ruthless in our decision making, that we're not going to do anything that compromises performance. That being said, we've been able to come up with some sustainable effectively replacement of carbon fiber. We now have sustainable fuels. So the internal combustion engine, the problem there has been the fuel, not the ICE. Now that we've solved the fuel problem, we're talking about going back to V8s, maybe V10s. I think it'll be a V8. I do think we are in the sport and entertainment business. We're not in the transportation business. So I do think different vehicles are going to be propelled in different ways. So I think there's, the internal combustion engine is going to always be around, the hybrid, then you're going to have battery technology, regeneration. So I think we'll go back to more ICE. Right now we're 50-50. It's presented some challenges. The racing's been fantastic. The drivers don't necessarily love it because they have to race differently. They want to be flat out, but I think we can be both sustainable and entertainment. I don't think it has to be an either or.
Another question. Yeah, Megan.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach, for your time. So you, in this conversation, have talked a lot about bringing in new leadership to change the culture at McLaren. I'll repeat the start of that question. So in this conversation, you've talked about bringing in new leadership, selecting people for your leadership team. I'm curious, on the flip side, how do you think about, especially coming in as a new CEO, how do you think about developing leadership amongst your existing employee and talent pool, and how do you change the culture internally without necessarily bringing in a new leadership team to support yourself with?
I think, key to being a leader is leading by example. So that's very important, getting everyone to work together and getting people comfortable with challenging each other. So we have, people can call timeouts in our office. And what I mean by that is you can work on projects and you go, we just spoke about this 2 weeks ago, it's going nowhere. And sometimes that happens because you don't have a project lead. You have 10 people working on a project. One of the questions I asked earlier is who's the boss? And every project needs to have a boss. And sometimes if they don't, and you have different departments coming in, everyone wants to be a little bit too polite to each other, and the project doesn't kind of keep pace, or it goes a little bit off pieced so if you see that in one of our meetings, regardless of who you are, regardless of what level of seniority you have, you can call a timeout. Go, hey, we're kind of not making progress. We covered this last week, et cetera. So that's something. We also have, which my HR people don't like, especially in today's world, I have a DEFCON system. And they don't like that because that's usually nuclear war. But that's to create pace. There are things that are important. There are things that are urgent. Sometimes that's one and the same. Sometimes they're not. And so knowing when to pick up the pace. So there is no 5, which is kind of sitting back. 4 is it's like a pit crew. Pit crew's always on standby because they may not think they're pitting for 20 laps, but it can have puncture at any time. So having the state of readiness in an organization, having everyone kind of leaning in is critically important. The larger the organization, the harder that is to do. And then when I sit down with my leadership team or in any meeting, I want honest feedback. And I'll come in and I'll maybe try and lead a meeting, and I have a vision or idea. I'm very comfortable being challenged on that. And if someone comes up with a better idea than I came up with, which happens 1 out of every 10,000 meetings, then I don't have any problem whatsoever of going, that's actually a better idea. I'm just trying to stimulate conversations. And so everyone needs to feel comfortable challenging each other in a respectful way. But if they're passionate about speak up, when people don't speak up, that bothers me more. When people had an opinion, but they didn't bring it forward, because it all comes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's data. I want as much data as I can get from the meeting. When you get everyone working together like that, it's amazing how much energy a team can create.
Let's take one more question. Ian, I'll call on you.
Hello, Zach. Thank you for being here. I'm a PhD student in mechanical engineering in Amos's lab.
Is he any good?
I'd say so. And the question I have is about how drivers play into car development. You mentioned before that you yourself had kind of, delegated technical decisions to others because you don't have a technical background yourself. But of course, drivers, for the most parts, also don't have a formal engineering education. So how do you weigh the input of the drivers, who of course are the ones who actually have to drive the cars and can feel things, with the inputs from the engineers, especially when, the directions might point slightly differently based on what the driver feels versus what the telemetry screens say?
Yeah, so very good question. Oscar actually comes from an engineering background, so it's fascinating kind of watching him. He won't try and design anything, but he has a great appreciation. I think that's something that people that don't follow our sport don't fully appreciate, how smart these drivers are and how in tune they have to be with the racing car. So they'll give us feedback. They'll tell us what they want the car to do, but they won't go as far as telling us how to design the car to do that. But their technical understanding has to be great. So when we're doing all these developments, they know what to look for, feel for, what to feedback in a very precise way. There's things that the data will pick up that they can't feel because they're in such small margins, and that's why we have performance engineers, and you hear all the different codes that we're talking about with the driver, and that's because we're seeing things that they can maybe maximize braking into a corner or slow corner or exit, and they can't quite, and then there's items that they can definitely feel that you'll see on the data. Rarely do they say something that the data doesn't show you. So it's unusual, it'd be very unusual to kind of, well, the data is not saying that. You have a bad racing driver if he feels something different than what the data is saying. So it's really the two go hand in hand. And then that's where you see like Oscar, and he's mega now on Fridays. An area where he needed to improve in the early days was Lando had a little bit of a better feel for the car, more experience. And then you'd see Oscar a little bit further off on Friday. Now he's right with Lando on Friday, or faster than Lando on Friday. I mean, there's nothing between the two of them. And that was because he had a really good understanding of how to, kind of stay very focused, go look at the data overnight, look at what Lando was doing, and then be able to go and put that into place on Saturday. So he's one of the smartest drivers I've ever seen, of him being able to actually understand exactly what the car is doing and how he needs to also sometimes drive it differently to get the most out of it.
Great. Well, Zak, you have a lot of fans here that would love to meet you, get pictures, get signatures. Before we do that, can we give Zak a huge round of applause? Thank you.